from an undisclosed location in the Great Western Desert in the land of the free and autonomous Native American people, the 2024 presidential campaign leading it's time to return all US land back to their rightful owners. This is the Ben Zion Podcast. Techno-communism will win.
I have read a fair amount of his work, but it bears repeating because this is why, in my view, we need enhanced intelligence. Because there's no one on Earth who is encouraged or given the resources or time, or frankly just has the innate, no one has the innate mental capacity to understand what's going on around them. No one really tries, but even if you did try, so this is something that people say, Ben, you don't know anything about medicine. Ben, you don't know anything about computer science. Okay, yeah. Okay, I've been reading Wikipedia extracts and outlines and newspaper articles on these subjects for a pretty long time, and pretty specifically avoiding the more technically dense stuff, the literal technical manuals around these matters, because there's not enough hours in a day to understand the whole world. And that should be the goal, to create an operating theory of what is going on around you and what you should do. Who in the West actually does that? People are encouraged, if they're encouraged at all or given the time at all, because again, 75% of those people are effectively the people working at the checkout counter 60 hours a week. And the person who lives that lifestyle has no chance of, little chance of creating a good understanding of the world around them. They're not in a position to have a good understanding of the world. They're forced to accept lies, like just in the way that people maybe first accept that Jesus lives in your heart, and then accept that you need to have a car, and then accept that there's no escaping capitalism, and they accept these 10 or 20 bad ideas, and once you say to yourself, yeah, there's nothing I can do, and then you start creating rationalizations for the bad things that you've accepted and come to believe. And that is in itself an argument for why the system can be changed, because everybody is just pretending to believe bad things, knowing deep down that they're not true. And so when an upheaval occurs, a sea change type event occurs, they can pretty easily be made to disregard those things. And we're talking about systems. We're not necessarily even talking about what people really wholeheartedly embrace. The governments in a couple of countries have swung from being pretty reasonably socialist to being far right, 3 or 4 times in the course of the 20th century. And were all of those people, did every single one of those people who was alive in that time frame go from being a reasonable human being to being a fascist sympathizer, just back and forth, like a ping pong ball? No. I mean, those are the systems. And they can be dismantled. This is not something that Americans are taught to accept. I mean, almost every person that I met who's a computer scientist, when you talk about, say, what I talked about in this last episode of quantum computing breakthrough leading to societal upheaval, or when you talk about the conditions under which people could actually be living an unusually long lifespan, and everyone experiencing that, because that's what could happen much faster if everyone were inclined to think that way. And you say, well, they'll say, well, there's an Overton window. People will not accept that this is true. That is in itself a CIA talking point. That people are unable to change their thinking on the whole, and so we shouldn't try to change their thinking. Imagine being a person who actually would say that to someone, like in the context of tech accelerationism. Like, there's not a more fascistic and confused personality. That's why I've said, say, you've met people who are stupid, but you have not met people who are as stupid as fucking transhumanists. I'm sorry, because they're easily as conservative, as brainwashed as the average person of the capitalist class, liberals and conservatives, people in all or across those ranges. They're easily as brainwashed. I haven't seen that there's, like a 1% improvement in these groups compared to, or maybe, okay, that's being a little silly. But there's not a marked difference. And that's, they have as much conservative ideological baggage as any other American group, and yet they want to. They say they want to completely change the human form, completely change civilization as we know it, and that is again people like Peter Thiel. This has been recognized for since before Peter Thiel was born, that technological innovation is the most important property. So to appear to be to act as the arbiter of technological culture and thought, and appear to be advancing technology, but actually holding it back, because that's what happened. Right? There was a thing called integrated computing systems that were developed, and there was a thing called network technology that was developed, and then everybody said, this is now pretty close to the ruling elites said this is now pretty close to the kind of systems that could lead to a world revolution. That would lead to the end of private wealth. That's not good for us. They're thinking of in zero sum terms, because they could theorize that they would they and their cousins would live an unusually long time, or have more security and nice things in that world, but maybe they're just afraid of losing their resources or losing their heads for having been fascists, so they continue to be fascists. So that's my view as to why the Soviet Union was illegally overthrown by the U.S. Because that's what happened. They tried to bring the Soviet Union back in 1996. Millions of people died in those 5 years. Many millions of people died across Eastern Europe and the Soviet world, and because there was they didn't have that job security, they didn't have those institutions anymore. It was just a life expectancy in free fall, and all of these things in free fall, and they tried to bring it back, but it's the same forces that colluded in the first place to overthrow the USSR, arranged such that they couldn't have legal election to bring the Soviet Union back. And then, this is not. This is a little more speculative than just saying, okay, yeah, there's a Project Mockingbird. You can look at these operations, Peter Thiel and so forth, and say you don't want to, probably, but you can verify that you live in a fascist country. But to say that specifically tech accelerationism is the reason that the Soviet Union was overthrown, this is more of a pet theory. But I believe that the Western ruling elites and the think tanks that sit in rooms and discuss these, discuss how to maintain the systems that are killing the planet, how they're going to help do that. Good guys. Going back to 1975, 1985, when those two elements, personal computing and network technology, were when that comes into play in a world that that has a Soviet Union, and they would have gotten rid of China too if they could. Then that's a situation where private wealth could be abolished, which is the only thing that they care about. They don't care about whether Jesus actually lives in your heart. They don't care about any hyper-nationalist thing. They only care about maintaining a system where the ruling elites are in a relatively better position, a good deal better position, but it becomes when you see that all that that we've all sacrificed by accepting their games, because I believe that universal super longevity could have already been achieved, and not just aging and death. You can't think of a death without disease. I believe that disease could have already been overcome, and I believe that artificial superintelligence being integrated into the running of world systems could have already been easily done. All of that could have easily been done in that world where socialists are the arbiters of advanced technology and not the worst people in existence. And you won't find a tech person who's really going to say that. You won't. You'll find some of them who say, I like fully automated luxury capitalism. I mean, fully automated luxury communism. But I'm going to wait for the capitalists to fully automate my economic system. And then, at that unspecified time, maybe hundreds of years after my death, someone will be enjoying the fruits of luxury communism. These are the most revolution-minded people in these communities. People who are pretty specifically avoiding the question of what's being stolen and has been stolen in the course of the last half century from you, and what you're being prevented from achieving by brainwashing and far more coercive methods than that. And I said this, 100 million, literally 100 million people, not just incidentally, universal super longevity was not achieved, so many, many, many tens of thousands of people dying. No, it's not just the incidental deaths, the actual murders. 100 million actual murders were committed by the United States of America over the course of the last century and a half, when the military-industrial mechanisms started spinning and turned into the monstrosity that it is today. And, that's occurred more of the last 80 years. But huge number of deaths. And all of those deaths serve effectively the same function as the propaganda stateside. If you try to build a humane and sustainable economic system, if you try to resist the siphoning of resources into the hands of private capital, we will chop your head off, and make no mistake. And you won't do that again. You might try and do one or two little lesser good things, but you won't try to do that again. Not on my watch. Not as long as there's a CIA. That's the only function, effectively, of the United States. The United States has been an anti-communist entity, And anti-communism and fascism are the same thing. You know, like just in the sense that communism is not a mere aesthetic. Fascism is not just somebody who has a particular style of mustache, or it is it is private wealth exerting extreme influence over world affairs. In the United States, you know, whatever Nazi Germany was, whatever Japan was, or whatever fascist Italy was, the United States has done has been around, been doing that sort of thing 10 times as long, and has done 10 times as much dirt as any one of those, and is most importantly, it impacted your life as a person living after those those other fascist countries had fallen, presumably, has negatively impacted your life. And all that you have to do is start saying these things to everyone you meet. You don't say, Jesus lives in your heart. You don't say, okay, person saying the dumbest, most elitist thing they can think of, that is an accepted truth. All you have to do is say, that is a lie, and we have to fight for a people's revolution in our time. Um, and if a small number of people start doing that, then things start to change. And I don't see any way around effectively uh, doing this. Socialist, all they've achieved by bringing down the Soviet Union in anticipation uh, of the what would be a negative outcome for the Western ruling elites, network technology. Um, you know, what has network technology done just in the last 4 years? Facebook, Twitter. Um, these things have gone from being social media to being quasi-social interactions, like just no different from watching the television. A one-way thing that that you're talking to the television. Television's only talking to you, and that person knows less than you do. The only thing they know is they have a script in their hand that is the CIA talking points teleprompter, and they have to say things that are at least half truths for the most part, to maintain a barest credibility. Um, but they know less than you. They're just lying, and people being shadow banned and having their unless you are a CIA asset, effectively, you do not have a voice in social media anymore. And those, you know, but what have they really? They've managed to punt, right? They've squandered 4 decades, but uh, they can't have the advanced technology that they want and not have it ultimately bring about a world revolution. Um, so they've only just bought a few decades, but there's no way, there's absolutely no way that a world that has um, you already see it. You would never see uh, Germany just saying, you know, no, 6 noted statesmen in Germany saying that the United States is a genocidal actor across many decades, saying effectively what I've said in 1999 or 2006. You would never see people saying that. But anti-Americanism is transitioning from being a broad global phenomena outside of one or two countries to being an institutional phenomena. Countries are saying the United States is seriously fucked up, and and that's this feature. You have people at least being socialism minded um, on on the this is a growing phenomena, and you have people when you have revolutions like that occurring, um, in the absence of highly advanced algorithms, the kind that could say easily, because planned economies are not some hypothetical thing that's never occurred and could never work. There's been a lot of propaganda put into that idea. Holodomor. It's just literally changed the name um, um, of this famine condition, overstated famine condition that's specific to the Soviet Union. The United States had a Dust Bowl famine. The United States actively killed people during those years too, in ways that the USSR never would. It just happened to be at the same time. The United States killed about 50,000 of its citizens intentionally by poisoning alcohol, by putting poison in medical alcohol at a time when alcohol was illegal, to discourage by murdering them, to discourage people from consuming alcohol. But people were still consuming it because they didn't know that it was poison. So in the same era that the Soviet Union supposedly intentionally killed people through famine and mismanagement, the United States is conducting genocidal acts against black and brown people, against all workers in the United States, to a much, much higher degree. And in the absence of the Soviet Union to provide facts and arguments in defense of itself, the Western world has created these bizarre accepted truths that are just unconnected from reality. Because the reality is, under the Soviet Union, you can look at it year by year. People are living longer. People are not dying. Life expectancy went up a lot. People live longer because, surprise, surprise, if you guarantee people jobs and homes and healthcare, everybody lives a lot longer. And you can say, oh, what about this X creature comfort, Y creature comfort? All of those bases were being covered, but in the West, it's just as people said this a few years ago with Cuba. Cubans don't have as nice of cell phones as we do. Cubans don't have the network systems that we have. Yeah, now Cuban, a country that's been systematically abused by the United States, has a longer life expectancy than the richest country in the world. Because, surprise, surprise, education and a housing authority and universal health care and guaranteeing people a living wage within the society that they live means that people will live a longer time. And no amount of baubles and shiny objects and lies is going to change that. I guess I was going to talk about my thinking on omega point theory and why this very much Judeo-Christian and Christian influenced set of ideas is is something that I'm still willing to consider, because not if you could wave a magic wand and get rid of, without harming a single person, get rid of every Abrahamic thought that's ever occurring on Earth, I would happily do it. That's but when you're talking about a socio-political dynamic wherein revolutionary outcome, universal super longevity, or the integration of advanced algorithms into the systems governing our world, are occurring, some of the ideas that were come up with that were devised by these what are essentially mostly Christian philosophers are as close of a working theory on this as that of anyone out there that I have had access to. Yeah, okay, so I don't know all that much about computer science when it comes to technical matters, or medicine when it comes to technical matters, and so just as I've tried to have a survey of the news of the world as it relates to the specific set of objectives, I'm certain that there are more serious thinkers than Frank Tipler who I'm not aware of outside of the West, for example. Any number of them. And if you have any suggestions for people to read who aren't kind of crypto-fascists just bending over for a Western hegemon, by all means, share those people with me. I would love to hear what you think, and if you're thinking about these things, you probably are a little more favorably inclined to existing Western capitalist institutions than I am, and you probably, if you send me anything, it'll probably be things that I'm not going to really be looking at too seriously. But if there is a kernel of truth in there, you can believe that I will consider it. Thanks for your time. This went twice as long as it should have. I'll split this into two episodes, and I'll see you again.